and they make recommendations to the Seattle Police Department for systemic accountability. And then Seattle Police Officers Guild, or SPOG, that's the Seattle Police Union. Okay. So recently an OIG memo came out that said it could not certify an investigative report regarding complaints of police misconduct during some of the protests because the investigation was neither thorough nor objective. And so they said it was neither thorough or objective for the following reasons. So the language of the report finding supported the officer's narrative without any supportive evidence. There was evidence that contradict officer reports that was omitted. And then officers were not questioned on the discrepancies between the narrative of the complaints and their narratives, nor between their own statements and evidence discrepancies, nor in cases where there is indication that police protocols were not followed. Additionally, key officers that were involved in the complaints were never interviewed. So the reason why this is significant is it just really demonstrates how, unfortunately, our police accountability system in Seattle is not operating and working in the way we would like it to have actual accountability. Also in police accountability news, SPOG has been tweeting out some disturbing scare tactics with tweets that say, feel safer yet after incidences of community violence. So SPOG is they're implying that community violence is the result of the small cuts that were made to SPD and the budgeting process. And it really should be noted that to date, there have been no layoffs of SPD staff, and their 2021 staffing budget is fully funded. And then finally, this just came out a couple of days ago. So there were 6 officers that went to the January 6th Capitol, or to the Capitol on January 6th. And this is the largest contingent of any police department in the nation. So there was an investigation about this by the OPA, and they found that 2 of the officers at the insurrection, or were at the insurrection after the rally. They illegally trespassed on Capitol grounds, and they claimed they were unaware they had trespassed until after the fact, and that they were unaware there was an illegal insurrection occurring around them. So after reviewing video footage, the OPA found that their claims were unsubstantiated, or they were not found to be credible. And the OPA is recommending the firing of those 2 officers for unprofessional conduct, breaking the law, and failure to intervene in an unlawful act. There is also a separate investigation that is underway to determine if they lied, which under a SPOG contract is also grounds for immediate dismissal. Of the 4 other officers, 3 of which were, they said they were at the rally, but they were not at the insurrection, and the OPA did find that their claims were substantiated, and there were no disciplinary actions recommended. And then there was a 4th officer where they could not substantiate his claims either way. So there were no disciplinary actions recommended for that officer either. So finally, what we have been working hard on is our voter guide. So we sent out questionnaires in Seattle to mayoral candidates, at-large council seats for position 8 and 9, and city attorney candidates. And we have received questionnaires back from many of the candidates, which is very exciting. We also know there's a lot to understand about policing and police accountability. So we wanted to provide some context for our voter guide and hopefully help make it just easier to understand why we're asking the questions we're asking, why these things matter, and what role our elected officials play in police accountability and systems of public safety. So we can use your help. So one of the breakout rooms, you'll have an opportunity to look over some of these explanatory statements and the voter guide, and we can really use your fresh eyes to let us know how we're doing and how we can help you to better understand the issues. We're always open to new members, so the more people we have, the more work we can get done. Seattle Committee meets every other Monday from 6 to 7:30, and our next meeting is July 19th. And I will turn it over to Kate.
Thanks, Camille. I'm here to give some updates for King County Committee. So we can go to the next slide. So one of the things that we've been following is the Public Safety Advisory Committee. When Charter Amendments 5 and 6 passed last November, they made it so that the King County Sheriff is now an appointed position and that the council can change the duties of the sheriff's office. And so the council and the executive are working to kind of implement those changes, which means right now they are identifying values for who they want to be the head of the office, and as they move towards recruiting and appointing a new head. So the Public Safety Advisory Committee is a group of folks that are made up of 13 people from critical stakeholders, including some folks from the King County Officers Guild, as well as a lot of community members from various regional and racial demographic areas. And they are tasked with being part of the community engagement and also crafting a report to recommend what values we should be prioritizing in the next head of our sheriff's office, or if they change the name of it, public safety, however it gets changed over time. So that particular group is working hard right now to try to meet their deadlines for getting that report and getting community feedback. And they're currently working on putting together some small focus groups to gather additional thoughts from more people about improving the office and hiring that head. So the members of the committee are suggesting participants to be included in these focus groups. And in particular, they're doing separate ones, and they're looking for people that are Black, Indigenous, immigrants, or people of color. And Bailey is a member of our committee and our group and is here today. And she is able to put forward names for this and would really like our help in doing that. Bailey, do you have anything to add for this plug to get some support in finding some good names to suggest for these focus groups?
Yeah, they're going to be, right now, it's set to be 3 different groups, and it's crazy in a certain way, but our timeline is very, very short. So I envision, and many of us envision, this being a long-term effort and not something that's a one-off. We're going to come up with recommendations and then run them past folks like you and other community members as well. So these focus groups are just the first step for us. So the 3 different ones we're looking at right now lump Black and Indigenous folks together, then immigrants and all other people of color. That should be interesting. And then the third one is actually, I did not put this on the list for this, but I think it's important too, if anyone has some names, is law enforcement voices. So the list as it stands includes some former law enforcement people that I respect. So I think it'll be interesting on that group. So just 3 different groups. Now, if the first 2 spread out too big, we might, the facilitators who are organizing these, I will not be involved personally, will be dividing them up smaller. So those are the groups. So the ideal folks to sit on these focus groups are people who can reflect some sentiments across the community, because it's just going to be so darn limited. And it's going to be a one-time event for each one, but they're going to go deep. And the questions in particular, the way that the facilitator phrased it, is the purpose of the focus groups is to hear people talk about their experience with community safety, what values or expectations they have for someone they would trust to help their community feel safe, and what they would do to improve safety in their community if they were the sheriff. So that's what we have. Oh, and it's going to be one time, I said, and also compensation is going to be provided, and also translation if needed. Yeah, and you just put my phone number in the chat. That's good too. If there are folks that you know who are really they're interested, you've spoken to them and they want to be on the list, there'll be another calling, time when the facilitator can talk to them and see if they're really all in. So I can add them to the list directly, or if there's someone you want me to talk to. I don't know a lot of depth more than what I've just shared, but I am certainly happy to talk to someone before putting them on the list. So either way works. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so the phone number and Bailey's email are in the chat as well as on this slide. And if you're part of our Slack, she's also on Slack, so you can reach out through Slack too if you want to do a quick message that way. Next slide, please. So we also are working on the voter guide. We had questionnaires that we sent out to the King County Executive and council member candidates for the elections that had primaries, as well as Burien City Council members. We are interested in expanding into looking at more City Council races when we have folks in our group that are knowledgeable about what's going on locally in each of those cities and can help us craft things that are specific to those areas. So those are the ones that we had primary interest in our group for. Each of the questionnaires was a little bit different for the cities versus the King County. Similar to Seattle, we also have issue explainers that we've been working on to provide some context and current issues in particular, because a lot of us are still figuring out what is going on with policing at the county level. It's a little bit different. So we tried to give some overviews of the policing structures and thinking about these charter amendments that passed last fall and how that affects who we're thinking about electing now, and current issues around the sheriff's office at the county level, the jail, and some needle exchange program things that are going on. So these are things that we have drafts going for, and we would love continued input on how to improve them and make them more clear for folks. So there will be a breakout room helping us with that. Next slide. Our next steps with the voter guide after this primary pushes out is we would like to, as we head to the general election, there were some races that did not have primaries. We'll know who's coming through the primary, and then also we'll see who is up for city council in a lot of local areas. And so, like I said, we'd like to expand to more cities, similar to what we're doing with Burien. And so if you are in an area that is interested in being featured in the voter guide that we're putting together, we would love to have you join us to help us figure out what are the questions that are most meaningful to ask about policing for your city council races. We're going to be working on generating those questions and getting them out in time for the general election. And we meet on Tuesdays from 6 to 7:30 every other week, starting at on the 20th as our next meeting. And yes, thank you, Shannon, for adding into the chat. School boards is another really interesting thing to be thinking about in some of the races, especially with school resource officers. Looks like we have a question or a comment. Go ahead and unmute and share.
Yaela, did you have a question?
Or comment? Something to add?
I know she was having audio problems earlier, so if you can't figure that out, Yaela, go ahead. If you can put it into chat, we could also try to address that. And we'll have more time for Q&A after we do finish the other updates, so there'll be another opportunity.
All right. There also will be a chance with the breakout rooms, I believe, to be thinking about some of the King County candidates as well, if that's something you just want to take some time to learn and talk with others about, and finding out your district and those kinds of things can be things that we do in that breakout room. Awesome. I think that's all for King County.
Okay, turning it over to Shannon. And is Rita here today? I can't tell.
Yeah, she just joined.
Okay, great. All right, so turning it over to Shannon and Rita for an update on the state legislature committee.
Yeah, so state legislature had been on hiatus as we recovered from the grueling 2021 legislative session. But I think we are feeling rested up and ready to restart meeting again so that we can get ready for what's coming up in 2022. Oh, can you go back one, Vicki? Okay, yeah. So yeah, bills and issues that we know for sure will be working in the next session. These are, issues that got introduced in 2021 but didn't make it across the finish line, unlike some of the other bills we worked on, are going to be HB 1202, which addressed civil accountability and qualified immunity, and as well as SP 5134, which was collective bargaining reform for law enforcement guilds and associations. So Rita is here to tell us a little bit about the current status of what's going on with 1202. So Rita, if you are able.
I am here. Let's see if you can see me as well. Here I am. So thank you. So I'm a member of Washington Coalition for Police Accountability, and we also had been on hiatus, but we have begun meeting again to prepare for the 2022 session. With regard, first of all, let me say that there's a third bill that the WCPA is concerned about, which is 1507, the one on an independent prosecutor. If we got that passed, we would have someone at the state level to be the prosecutor when police kill someone. And we already will have an Office of Investigation that passed, but to have a prosecutor not affiliated with one of the counties, we think would be a lot more valuable than what we have now. But Shannon asked me to speak on 1202. The 1202 is sometimes called civil liability or civil accountability, means that a family who has lost someone could apply for damages to the state rather than to the federal government. Currently, you need to do literally a federal case, and this would make it possible in the state of Washington to garner funds at the state level. You could bring charges against a department, not just an individual, or the city that's in charge of the department if we got this passed. And it would include the legal fees as well. That's something else we're asking for. And I'm not sure about the qualified immunity part, but I believe that that's something that exists at the federal level. And because we would be redoing this at the state level, we would do it without qualified immunity. So you could charge a police officer as well. Of course, the pushback comes from the cities, the Association of Cities of Washington, ACW, I believe. And of course, they're worried about the insurance costs to cover these possible events. Our answer is just quit having these events and we'll all be a lot safer here. But last year or this year in 2021, the bill made it through up to the Rules Committee of the House. So just, House bills are the ones that are below 5,000 and Senate bills are 5,000 or above. So that's how I always remember which house I'm in, 1202. And so it would continue from there. And I think a Representative Ty is the first sponsor. So things are in flux. Yeah. With that one, we're still putting our heads together and figuring out who to contact and how. We do have a list from Paul Benz, who is our group member and also a lobbyist. And he has collected a list of people that are possibly persuadable. On Wednesday evening this coming week, if all goes well, I will attend the Not This Time meeting, which is the impacted families, and ask them if any of them live in the legislative district of those representatives and senators. So that's one thing we're doing to begin to plan how to approach this problem of the cities. And any input that folks have would be greatly appreciated. I think that's it for that one.
Thanks, Rita. That's
Sure.
super helpful. Yeah, I guess I've always, if the cities are complaining about insurance costs being high, I wonder, do they actually have any sense of what those insurance costs are and how much does that compare to money they spend paying out settlements to families that
Right.
lost loved ones, right? I mean,
Right.
it'd be better to have a solution where we don't lose the loved ones.
Right.
Great. So yeah, Vicki, if you can now move on to the next slide. So I'll talk a little bit about collective bargaining reform. So that one, as Rita explained, it was a Senate bill because it has a number that starts with 5,000. It did not make it nearly as far as the Qualified Immunity Civil Accountability Bill. It had a committee hearing in the Senate Labor, whatever the Senate Labor Committee is, and that was it. Nothing happened. It didn't get scheduled for executive session or anything. So yeah, we're super interested in moving this forward. We'll have more detail at our August general meeting because I think we'll be highlighting this issue. But generally, I think it's becoming much more in the common awareness that the police guilds and associations just hamper the ability of us to hold them accountable through their collective bargaining agreements. And so what this bill was trying to do was to kind of take off the bargaining table things related to accountability for serious misconduct by law enforcement. So, we want to retain the rights of the workers to be able to negotiate things such as fair wages and benefits, but things that how an investigation can take place when misconduct happens should not be on the bargaining table. So that's kind of the very short version of what that bill is about. So several of us had a meeting recently with ACLU of Washington to start trying to discuss next steps. So that was a great informative meeting. So we decided we're going to try to set up regular check-in meetings with them because legislative session is going to come up pretty quickly. We're also going to follow up with their policing policy expert on just kind of the policies with regards to, we are thinking about trying to use Campaign Zero's Nix the Six resources, which look at problematic provisions within contracts. So in terms of our group, what we've decided that we're going to work on next is, we want to strategize for broader union engagement. That's kind of the crux of trying to get this passed, is that we need other unions to not feel threatened and feel like that this bill is going to be something that's against the labor movement as a whole. That is not the intent. So thinking about that. So part of that will be figuring out how to talk about it. So we're going to work on trying to draft some talking points and then pass them over to the ACLU to review. And then, this last session, we were able to get the Seattle Education Association to sign on and send a letter in support of the bill. So we're interested in kind of building on that, learning about that process and how we were able to do that, maybe put together a package that we could move on and send it to other education associations and try to build up more support amongst teachers and kind of use that as outreach. So basically that's where we're currently at. So Vicki and I chair. Vicki and I chair this. Is there an echo or is that just me? Okay, so Vicki and I chair the state legislature committee. So she and I will be trying to figure out when to restart the meeting. In a little bit, we'll put up a little poll. So if you're interested in helping us out with that work, then just click state legislature committee and then we'll get you looped into whatever we start doing next. And then Rita, did you have a question?
I just wanted to comment that historically, policing does not have a good reputation, right? They were slave patrols in the South, and in the North, they were union busters. And so it's kind of ironic here that people are, concerned about limiting some of their union rights and feeling like that will be, then their rights will be given up next. That's really the concern. And Kate, we know you did a good job speaking to some education union members, and we'd like to learn from that for talking to other unions as well.
Thanks, Rita. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's trying to figure out how to message this appropriately because the policing guilds and associations have definitely figured out how to weaponize the labor movement against itself. So,
Shannon, I had a quick question. Do you know if when we pick up this bill next legislative session, does it go to the same committee that it went to last time?
Yeah, I think they're still trying to work that out. One of our questions at the meeting was whether they're going to stick with the same language and the same bill and the same sponsor and all that. And I think they're still trying to determine that. So they're working, with their allies to sort of figure out, okay, like kind of what edits would need to happen. And then I think they are thinking about introducing it in the House rather than the Senate first. The House is just more progressive on these issues, and just there's maybe better political dynamics to start on that side and hopefully get it moving further than in the Senate. I guess, yeah, Vicky, you can move on to the next slide. We already kind of started the committee Q&A, but I guess we can like officially be on committee Q&A. So yeah, does anybody else have any other questions about anything about Seattle, King County, or state legislature? So feel free to either put in chat, or you can just raise your hand, and or if you don't know how to do that, just start asking your question.
Bailey, you look like you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm woefully ignorant of Seattle's system of accountability, but is the OPA part of the police department, or are there two independent oversight agencies?
And so OPA is housed within SPD. So they are a part of SPD. They have, I believe it's like 12 investigators, and of those, I think 2 of them are civilian and the rest are officers that investigate.
It's interesting then to compare the 2 investigations you talked about. And I read about the insurrection one that went deep. My God. I mean, maybe they just wanted a trip to DC or something, but they went all the way to DC to see some of this stuff. And then in the other one, the OIG finds that they barely scratched the surface.
Yeah, I mean, so OIG is supposed to be kind of looking at the systemic issues, whereas OPA is doing like specific incidences. And then, yeah, there's been talk about trying to move OPA out of SPD officially, but then there's the issue of, then it's harder for them to subpoena and talk to the officers. So that's all, yeah, up for debate about whether that's good or not. So Bailey, you would be a perfect candidate to help us read our Seattle issue explainers and tell us if they make sense.
Okay. Thank you, Shannon. You're always thinking.
Kathleen, did you have a question?
Yeah, maybe you answered it. I'm really concerned about the OPA being under the auspices of SPD, and dang it, to know my alphabet is going to be challenging anyway. It sounds like that's not going to happen. And I'm kind of, yeah, you want police to be involved in it, but I'm wondering why, this seems to me like just a blatant conflict of interest. And, I'm of moderate intelligence, so I'm assuming that other people would feel the same way. And I'm kind of wondering why it can't be shifted away, and if there's any true possibility that it will. And so maybe you answered it, and maybe the answer is just no, and I'll have to go through the 5 stages of grief around that. But then the other comment is, if you have people in the OPA who are not on board, just ideologically with divestment of police departments, how does that work towards achieving the goal of investing in communities and divesting in police departments?
Yeah, I can try to answer that. So I in terms of where the OPA is housed, yes, there have been voices that have voiced concern about that, but it actually, it's not universal. And there's other people within that are advocating for police accountability that think that would be a bad idea, because they're worried about access to information from SPD if it's moved out, and there is some advantage to actually having officers as part of it who know, about what the protocols are and procedures. So I mean, I think there's a case to be made on both sides, and I definitely see where the concern is, but I think there's differing opinions and not universal thought, even within police accountability advocates. In terms of, well, I think, I mean, OPA's focus is narrow in terms of they are really just investigating officer misconduct. So I don't know that they really have a role in terms of like defund, reinvest, and where all that's at. I mean, their role is just really narrow in terms of like when there's a complaint lodged against an officer, they investigate those complaints. So
Yeah, and I would also just add that OPA gets a bad rap, and that may be well deserved. I mean, I am personally also not happy with a lot of decisions that come out of them, but I also acknowledge that they are hamstrung by what happened with the 2018 SPOG contract. You know, the 2017 Police Accountability Ordinance established OPA and gave OPA certain rights, such as full subpoena powers, but then the city agreed to a contract with the police guild that basically took away that. They also, took away the ability to have as many civilian investigators as the director of OPA would want. So there's always a question in mind as to, okay, if the OPA was actually allowed to be the way it was originally designed, like, would it be better or not? And I think nobody really knows the answer to that question because unfortunately we have not been able to actually see that experiment carried out. So that's why these local elections matter, because who we elect as the next mayor and city council will have a huge say in sort of how this all moves forward and whether, yeah, we can try to see if things that we had tried to put in place can actually happen.
Can I ask the question then in a different way? Do you feel that there's real strong support around divesting in police? I mean, citywide, countywide.
You mean from our elected officials or from the public?
Yeah, I don't know. You pick, just what's your sense? I mean,
I can say that in this group that you're in, I feel like there's probably gigantic
no,
support.
I understand that.
But I live in a bubble, so I don't know if I can so that's, for me, I am so curious about how these elections are going to pan out, right? I have gigantic anxiety about who gets picked for some of these key roles. And, not that the only issue that people are going to be thinking about as they fill out their ballots is going to be about, defund versus reinvest, or defund, reinvest versus not. But I feel like for a lot of people that is sort of thinking about like whose vision of public safety are they going to support will influence the ballot. So
well, and especially if they're putting out scare tactics, which I think does influence people. People like to believe that we're living in a very unsafe environment when in fact maybe the safety has to do with police and their tactics.
But I will say that, last fall, Kate mentioned that the King County Charter amendments were on the ballot, and those passed overwhelmingly across the county. And if you look across, if you look at the election data down to cities and legislative districts, I think the majority of them were more like over 50% in support of, and for me, the barometer is Charter Amendment 6, which was about being able to change the structure and duties of the King County Sheriff's Office. So it doesn't really, it didn't say defund and reinvest, but it is this idea of, okay, can we think about different ways to do public safety? And so to me, that was, kind of a correlation there. And so it was encouraging to me because I think that a lot of times there's this narrative that Seattle just decides everything for the entire region. And yeah, I mean, in Seattle, the numbers were off the charts in terms of people supporting that charter amendment. But yeah, even in suburbs and places where you wouldn't necessarily expect such wide support, there was. And so that gives me hope that maybe people are listening. And as long as the scare tactics that you mentioned aren't getting in the way, that maybe they will make a choice the other way.
I think that's a real concern. And I hope that the New York City Democratic mayoral primary is not an indicator, but that election was pretty worrying to me. And I think we're going to have some serious marketing issues with the fear mongering. And because there are data showing that gun deaths are up and other violent crimes are up, and how to contextualize that appropriately is tough, and most people don't bother to wait for context.
Yeah. Okay. So let's, I'm gonna just, we can keep talking more and then hopefully have time more at the end, but I just want to also make sure we have enough time to talk about the voter guide. So I'm gonna put up a poll. So if any of you are interested in getting more involved in any of those committees that we talked about, Seattle, King County, or state legislature, you can mark that in the poll that's going to pop up for you. And then in addition, we're also looking for anybody who wants to help us out with kind of the general group organization. And Teresa's going to speak a little bit about kind of what that specifically means. But there's an option on the poll that is going to say helping with group organization. And so that's what that means. So Teresa.
Yeah, so if you click on that option, we'll follow up and see if you have any specific areas you want to help with. And then also you'll kind of be on the list. So like a lot of times, you know, these meetings take a lot of work. It's sometimes great to have more people like adding stuff to chat and just so, you know, to help us just run these meetings very smoothly. So, you know, if we really get into a situation where we need help, we'll be reaching out to the people on that list, and you can opt out at any time if you don't want us to reach out to you anymore. So yeah, just click that if you're interested, and I'll reach out with more details. Thanks.
Cool. All right, here is the poll. And if you're a co-host, I don't think you get to vote. So if you're not seeing it, that's why. And I already know what committees you're on. I know, Vicky, I could tell. You were concerned. And yeah, signing up for any of these, it doesn't commit you to anything. It just kind of helps us organize sort of who to direct stuff to. And as Teresa said, you can opt out at any point on anything. Just, you know, we are not trying to sign you up for, I don't know, like never being able to unsubscribe. That is not our intent.
Yeah, you can also you can come to these meetings and just listen in. I know I did that for a while before I felt like I had enough to know where I plugged in. So feel free to do that.
Okay, great. Looks like most people have voted. If you didn't get a chance, then feel free to reach out to us later. Oh, okay. Okay, Ruth, I got yours. Okay, sweet. Thank you, everyone. Okay. So now I think, Vicky, I'm going to steal, oops, sharing screen.
Shannon, want me to unshare? Stop sharing?
No, I think I can just boot you off.
Okay.
I just figured out how to do that. Okay, I just have to figure out which window. Sorry, I have way too many windows open. No, that's not the right one. Okay, this one. Okay, can you see my screen? It should say primary voter guide launch. Okay, cool. So a lot of us have been hard at work putting together a voter guide for the primary, as the Seattle and King County committees mentioned. So I am going to show you what we have so far and also let you know what we still need help with. So yeah, if you go to, you don't have to do this right now, but I'm just showing you on my screen. So wapeoplepower.org, this is our homepage or our website. And so the easiest way to get to the voter guide is up here at the top right in the navigation, the 2021 voter guide. So this is the landing page for that. Just some little blurb. And so yeah, the 3 jurisdictions that we have set up for the primary are King County, Seattle, and Berrien. So if we look at King County, then we have a little landing page for King County. And then we looked at King County Executive and King County Council. So this is just a little description about what those offices do. And any of this content that I'm showing you got thrown together by several people in the last 36 hours. So if there's any mistakes or typos or edits to content that you would want to suggest, please let us know, because it is definitely an iterative work in progress. But yeah, so then you can meet the candidates. So for King County Executive, and this is going to be a candidate scorecard that compares the candidates based on answers they gave us in the questionnaire we sent them. I haven't gotten around to actually generating those scorecards yet, so this is just a placeholder, so please ignore what you see. It makes no sense at the moment. But anyway, if you scroll further down, then yeah, we have so Dow Constantine and Joe Wynn, candidate photos. I still need somebody to help me download those so that I can make them not look like these bald default people. So that would be great. But yeah, so if you click here, then it'll open up a new page. And this is what Dow told us that he thought about all these questions. So if you want, the candidate scorecard will take the yes, no questions and kind of give you a quick overview of how the candidates compare on these yes, no questions. But as you can see, there's a place for them to put in additional comments. So if you're going to want to understand more deeply what the candidate thinks, then looking at this, the full candidate questionnaire is probably the place to go. So you can see Dow wrote quite a bit. And then there were some longer form questions as well. You know, we tried to ask them things like, what is your idea of public safety? And so I don't know, so there's just a lot here. And then similarly, if you go back, Joe Wynn completed the same questionnaire. So you can put these side by side and kind of look through and try to figure out who you want to vote for. And then what I did is I put people who returned a questionnaire to us at the top so that it'll be easier to find. And then the people who did not return it, but are still in the race, such as Good Space Guy, who did not return our questionnaire, they are listed further down. And I ordered everybody based on the order they are going to appear on the ballot, just to be fair and not try to show favoritism for any one person. So if anybody asks, that's the process by which they got listed. So yeah, so that's if you're wanting to know about your candidates. If you're looking at that questionnaire and you're like, I have no idea what this concept means, then that's where you can keep scrolling down on the landing page. And then this is where issues get covered. So things about like the charter amendments, concerns about the current King County Sheriff. You know, you can click through. And so, yeah, these issue explainers definitely, I think, need help. Just more eyes looking them over and letting us know, you know, whether they make sense or not, you know, kind of what other resources would be helpful for you to understand, that sort of thing. But yeah, here's issues. And then if you just want to see a blank version of the candidate questionnaires, then there's links to those down here. So that's King County. And so you can go and take a quick peek at Seattle. So it's similar setup. So we have it broken down into Seattle Mayor, Seattle City Council, Seattle City Attorney. So for Seattle Mayor, again, I haven't done the scorecards, but then, yeah, I think Camille mentioned we were really happy with kind of the response that we got from Seattle candidates. So I think most of the quote serious mayoral candidates did return the questionnaire. So that was Andrew Grant Houston, Lorena Gonzalez. We also got Clinton Bliss, Colleen Echo Hawk returned, Donnell Rivers, and Jessen Farrell. So notably, people who did not return it were like Casey Sixpiller and Bruce Harrell. And then, yeah, then the Seattle issues are here. So if you are not sure what the 2012 consent decree was, or the police accountability ordinance, or want to understand more about what the OPA is, Bailey, then hopefully these pages will help you learn. And so there's all this. And then, yeah, the blank questionnaires are here. One thing about Seattle is I intend to add another page that is about Charter Amendment 29, which some people may know is the Compassion Seattle Initiative. ACLU of Washington is officially against it. So we're going to put up a page also to try to help people understand why you should vote no on Charter Amendment 29, assuming it makes it onto the ballot. Yeah, and then finally, we have Berrien is our test city for kind of expanding out beyond the King County and Seattle. So Berrien has city council positions up for election, and you can go here and meet all the Berrien candidates. So I think that's the gist of the voter guide. So, like I said, it's at wapeoplepower.org, and then you can go up here and kind of explore around and let us know. So I just wanted to kind of highlight things that we need help with.
I think there's a question, Shannon. I don't know if you want to take it now or.
Oh yeah, sure.
Kathleen, if you want to unmute and go ahead.
Yeah, is there any information about where candidates are getting their campaign funding from? I think that speaks to what they might do if they're elected.
Yeah, so not yet. That's definitely something that there's been interest in potentially putting together, but it's also dependent on our volunteer capacity, which most of the effort has been putting into what you see up there, is getting the questionnaires out and processed, as well as getting those issue explainers up. But I would love to add other things, or if people have other ideas, so that leads beautifully into kind of what the help we need on the voter guide is. So kind of general feedback. So if there's some kind of missing content that you think would be helpful, would love to hear ideas about that, and possibly even help with how to put that together and how to present it. Kind of if you see any typos, or if you have ideas about where the navigation could be better, if you kind of like go down one whole rabbit hole and then you can't figure out how to get back out of it, definitely let us know. We can work on that. Yeah.
I also wanted to add, somebody put it in the chat earlier. There is a public disclosure website where you can look at people, where they get campaign contributions from and who they are contributing to. So that is a place where you can get that information.
Yeah, I mean, at the minimum, it'd be cool if we could put together an explainer for how to do that, because I admit every time I go to the PDC website, I have to like reteach myself how to use it. So yeah, if we don't actually pull out the actual information just to give to people, then at least kind of a tutorial about, okay, this is how you get going. But again, it's just kind of whether we have time for everything or not. Yeah, so for the issue explainer, specific questions we would love to know about them are, do they make sense? After you read them, do you still have questions? What else would you like to know? Are the explanations too long? Are they too short? And then, right now it's pretty text heavy. So if there's any kind of visuals or graphics that you think of that could be helpful for conveying the information, we'd love to work on putting that together. This doesn't mean that you have to do that, but we just would love any kind of feedback or insight into how to make them more understandable, because we just want people to be as informed as possible. So for the candidate pages, I would really love help with just downloading the candidate photos from the elections website so that we can get rid of those placeholder images. I will be working on the candidate scorecards and could use sets of eyes on just whether they look correct or not. How they get formatted, what they look like. And then, what other information would be helpful about candidates? So as Kathleen said, it would be nice to know who's contributing to them and who are they contributing to. That could be something we add. And so any other things like that, we could think about trying to append. Then, so then kind of, you probably noticed like a lot of the banner images are all placeholder images from Squarespace. So if you have ideas, I think Burien people, if you want a different picture that represents Burien better across your landing page, that'd be great. I think it's all these mountains and pretty scenery, but not necessarily reflective of the page. So that would be, if somebody's very passionate about that, I could use help with picking out images. We could also just use a team of quality control people to just check that all the links work as expected. Teresa very helpfully told me earlier today that there was no questionnaire that appeared for Joe Wynn, so we were able to fix that quickly. Then, we want to put together that page about Charter Amendment 29. So if anybody wants to help with kind of producing the content or finding resources that will be helpful to provide, that would be great. And then, finally, we just need help with promoting it. A lot of time and effort went into this. We are hoping that it's helpful for people and it's a resource that can get used, but it's only helpful if people know about it. So it would be great to have ideas about how we can spread the word. Ballots are coming out later this week. So I think we're going to be scrambling the next couple of days to try to get everything as finished as possible so that then we can let people know as they get their ballots in the mail. This is where you can start learning about at least where people stand on policing and public safety. Then finally, looking ahead to the general election voter guide, after the primary, we'll revamp it and condense it down to the people who make it through the primary. But as Kate mentioned, we would love to include other jurisdictions. I think we heard some people were interested in adding Bellevue, but if you or people who might be interested, then definitely reach out. Most of what that would entail is just kind of helping us write the questionnaire. Like, I think we have a baseline questionnaire, but kind of if there are specific issues, for example, like I know Kent has a municipal jail, so I feel like the Kent questionnaire should ask something about the jail down there, that sort of thing. But it's just, we are not from those areas, and so it's always easier to have somebody who's the local expert help with that kind of thing. So if you are interested in helping, you can send an email to wapeoplepower@gmail.com, or if you're in our Slack channel, Slack group, there's a channel called Voter Guide Feedback that just for anything, please join there. And I would love if you put all your comments in there so that I can keep track of where they are rather than trying to remember like the 100 different ways people have been reaching out to me about it. So yeah, I think that's it on the voter guide. Does anybody have questions? I see
there were some questions in the chat, and then Kathleen's hand is up as well. But I can just, so Rita wanted to know what's our deadline, and then is this in addition to official county voters pamphlet?
Okay, so the official deadline is we're just trying to get as much done whenever we can. So I don't think there's an official deadline. I think, it's a living website and it's up now. So it would be great for like kind of the more egregious things that are wrong with it. If you read an issue explainer and it is completely wrong, then we would like to know that sooner rather than later. But, maybe smaller things like, okay, if the pictures aren't beautiful, then that can happen later. So I think at this point, I'm just trying to think about how to prioritize sort of like in order of importance. But that's why I'm asking, like, this is the list of things that we need help with. So if there's something particular that you think you can do or would be passionate about, then please reach out because we could use a lot of help. And then, when you mention in terms of the King County voter guide, I mean, this is separate, I guess. Yeah, this is separate, but we did I did link to, so if you go and look at a candidate, kind of their candidate statement that they provided. So that would be what appears in the King County voter guide. This is just, we didn't produce this, but it's kind of a helpful place to just go. And this is like what the candidate officially said. And then, actually they have a link to their campaign contributions right here. So if you don't know how to use PDC very well, then this is a good place to go to get to that spot. So, for example, this is Teresa Mosqueda. So on the front page, you can see right off, okay, she's had $176,000 of contributions and she spent this much. If you want to know where those contributions came from, you can go to this tab. And it lists the top 45, but you can always download if you want the full spreadsheet and to super nerd out on all that information. This pie chart kind of lets you know the breakdown. So most different donations have come from individuals. Then political action committees are this little red sliver. And then finally unions are here. And then if you want to see what they spent the money on, that's the expenditures tab. So so it's kind of fun to start bopping around in here and trying to see what people are spending money on. You can figure out who their political consultant is and stuff like that.
And then Mary also asked, is the ACLU of Washington going to promote our voter guide?
Yeah, I hope so. And that's another big impetus for wanting people to help look it over before I send it to them to look at and decide whether they're going to officially promote it or not. But I think the plan was they were going to. It's just sometimes they're very slow in terms of all the layers of approval they have to go through. So I'm hoping that if we get it to them early, that I would hope by the election they will actually promote it, but we'll see. I think they will. I think they have much. I mean, we worked with them on the candidate questionnaires. They reviewed, we drafted them and they reviewed the questions. So it's not like they don't know what we're doing. And I think they are very supportive and excited about what we've done. So yeah, that is a hope for us.
And then I can answer Kathleen's question in chat. She says, will People Power make candidate endorsements? So we are an ACLU affiliate group, and the ACLU is nonpartisan. So we cannot make candidate endorsements, and we won't be doing that. But we try to just ask questions that are important to us in terms of police accountability, and then obviously post the candidates' responses so people can look at those and make their decisions around that issue.
Cool. Any other questions or comments or immediate ideas? Does anybody want to help me with anything? Okay, it's okay, because we're about to do breakout rooms where you'll have an opportunity to do it right now. Great. So I guess, Teresa, I can just continue this screen share and then you can cover